A very good morning to you. I'm Tami Ngubeni. This is the South African Morning right here on eNCA. My partner in crime, or partner in goodness and all things good, is not with us in the studio today. As you'll know, over the past couple of days, he's been out in Sun City with the Tourism Month. And Gareth is over there as we continue celebrating spring as well as Tourism Month. And it is day 2 of the Tourism Business Council's Leadership Conference at the famous resort in Sun City. And this year's theme is Tourism, the Engine of Growth. Now, the sector plays a crucial role in the South African economy, providing much needed employment. And that's what we'll be highlighting, the importance of Tourism Month and the importance of tourism in general for the country's economy. Gareth Edwards is talking to us and will be coming to us this morning from the Gary Player Golf Club at Sun City. Now, Gareth, you've been having a really good time in Sun City, not only from the relaxation part, but perhaps most importantly from the business part. Yesterday, you managed to speak to various stakeholders in the tourism industry. What are you looking forward to and anticipating for today?
Well, I was looking forward to 18 rounds of the world-famous Gary Player golf course, but apparently I have to stop doing that and come here and do a TV interview and stay with you. Morning, Tommy. Good to have everyone with us as well. I think the most exciting part for me is two things that are standing out, and one of those is the discussion I'm going to have with Ross Volk in just a moment from MSC Cruises. We're going to talk about that shipping industry, that cruising industry in SA. But before we get to that as well, it's the anticipation around a regrowth, a rebirth, if you will, of the South African aviation industry. Now, we've had a couple of problems with that. A few of our low-cost domestic airlines, as a result of COVID, no longer with us. Think orange, think green. They're not there anymore. Well, orange might be there, but we're not too sure at this point. Green is definitely gone. It creates issues from getting from main hubs like Johannesburg, Durban and Cape Town into the other parts of South Africa in a cost-effective and efficient way. I think everyone knows how expensive airline tickets have become over the years. Now, the reason that's very, very important is if you were one of those international travelers coming into Johannesburg and you decide, well, Johannesburg is lovely, the Northwest is lovely, but how about we go on one of the world-famous cruises that leave either Durban or leave Cape Town? How do you get there at the cost of the tickets these days, and the logistics involved with getting a flight because there are so few carriers has become a lot trickier. Is that affecting the shipping industry? Well, let's talk about their economy, and I'm glad you used your turn of phrase earlier, Tommy, the engines of tourism economy, because Ross Volk, you got some pretty big engines on your ships.
Yeah, 4 generators that produce quite a large amount of power. In fact, the newest vessel that we have produces somewhere in the region of about 25 megawatt hours of energy through LNG, which is great for the sustainability of cruising.
So Ross, of course, the MD of MSC Cruises here in South Africa as well. And how is that looking? I'm asking the question because I was hearing from the city of Cape Town yesterday about the number of cruises that are coming into the Cape Town harbour. Can you give me a contrast between Durban and Cape Town?
It's not really a fair contrast in that Durban is predominantly MSC. So I think there's 78 calls in Durban, of which 65% will be MSC over the next 6 or 7 months.
78 calls, what does call mean?
So when a vessel comes into port. So there'll be 78 vessel calls at the terminal, of which 65% will be MSC. Right. So, you know, Cape Town being the mother city in terms of the attractions it has a slightly bigger pull in terms of stopping over for these cruises, both on world cruises and on the sort of regional space that they occupy. But Durban is trying to grow, and we are growing that space. We spent 300 million on the terminal in Durban, and we're now doing an upgrade for another 30 million on the terminal to accommodate our biggest vessel coming, MSC Splendida, which will arrive on the 22nd of November. So, yeah, we're investing a lot of money in that terminal, and we hope to grow it in terms of cruise calls.
I'm glad you used the word cruise calls. Now I can sound like I know what I'm talking about as well, Ross. What's the planned growth? If it's currently 78 on average, you've got the Splendida coming down as well. Is there a target in mind?
There isn't really. We're trying to look at how we make it work. There's obviously, we had a meeting with the regional tourism bodies last week where we were discussing the expansion plan of KZN. So we're looking at Richards Bay, we were looking at some of the smaller ports, Port Shepstone, and a couple of other areas, and also looking at what we can do in the hinterland in terms of bringing people from a tourist perspective into KZN as a province and the wider areas within South Africa.
I want to talk just about the conference for a second, if that's okay. Tourism Minister was here. Some of the world's or some of the countries' leading tourism minds were here. What was your expectations and what's come out of it for you? Because yesterday was really the main day. There's a couple of more chats this morning at the conference centre, but yesterday was the main day. What were you hoping for? What were you hearing?
I think the biggest thing for me was the minister was here and she participated in discussions, which I think is fantastic she did. And huge respect to her for being here, taking time out of a busy day to be in the room. She listened to all the conversations with a very open mind. I had a very good chat with her last night about a couple of things. And I think also the networking opportunities with people within our travel sector. You know, travel is one interconnected. I can't function without airlines. I can't function without buses. I can't function without people traveling. So the reality is we all need to talk to each other and we all need to engage with each other and network. And I think that was one of the primary things that we got out of yesterday was the ability to touch base again, talk to people about some of the challenges we're seeing if it's common and how do we solve it. And I think it was very practical yesterday. And as I said, the Minister and the DG of Tourism were very engaging. And I think hats off to them for being here and listening to industry and then taking forward the issues that we need to resolve.
How affected is MSC by international events, or is MSC in South Africa and Africa? Are you quite isolated from all the problems over in Europe, of which obviously you function out of very, very highly? Is it the case of the butterfly flapping its wings, or are we quite sheltered here?
No, I don't think we're sheltered. I think economically wise, everything's interconnected. So the South African economy is struggling and reeling on the back of the war in the Ukraine, post-COVID elements, high interest rates, low growth in China. All of those factors impact the South African economy. And as a result, then we feel it because, you know, we're selling on a mass scale to people in South Africa. So if you are on the breadline or you are, you know, struggling to pay electricity tariffs or increased diesel costs, you're not going to be having the money away or put it away to take a holiday. So we feel those effects. So it's not that we're isolated in terms of these spaces. We feel it. Everything's interconnected and the world's interconnected. And I think we have to realize that going forward.
I wanted to ask a question. It probably is still a very stupid question. And I think a not so stupid question. One, what's the recovery been like since COVID? Because I was saying yesterday, last year's conference felt very much post-COVID recovery. This year's feels more about growth. It's like, okay, let's deal with it. Let's move on. It might be fair or unfair. Would like your thoughts. And two, does MSC get affected by blackouts? I mean, not obviously on the ship, I don't think, out in the water, but what about back home when you bring your ships in to docking? Does that make any difference in your world?
So let's deal with that one first. So there's no load shedding on an MSC cruise ship. So we've got all the water we need because we have an onboard desalination plant, which reverse osmosis, the technical term, creating drinking water, showering water, and all that kind of stuff. So we are very insulated in that space. And even in the harbour, we're insulated in terms of that because a generator will run on board the vessel to power whatever latent electricity is required. In terms of your question about this as growth, I mean, obviously we've brought a new ship to South Africa, so MSC Splendid is 1,000 passengers extra. So we see the growth and the value proposition of South Africa. And we're hoping to have a very good season this year. We had a struggle the last season, but I think that was the post-COVID recovery and the economic conditions. So I think we are seeing some subtle growth, but as I mentioned earlier, you know, the economic conditions of South Africa are tough. And people have to make tough decisions. I would highlight that going on a cruise is probably one of the best and most value propositions you can have from a holiday perspective because everything's included, entertainment, food, your accommodation. So you really don't have to go anywhere else to get everything. And I think if you take a look at a Cape Town or Durban or Sun City trip, you've got all the ancillary costs of entertainment and food which mount up, whereas you can lock that in at a cruise from the beginning. So you've got a great opportunity to lock in the value of your holiday.
Okay, yeah, this is one price and this is what you're going to get. Correct. Or if you sail into the distance and then come back. Very briefly, Ross, as I say goodbye to you, if you and I were to stand here again in a year from now, what would you like to have seen changed in your industry from a local perspective that we could talk about in a year's time from now?
I think consistency of policy from the government agencies. I think consistency would be key. And obviously the growth that we've experienced in a successful Splendid season, because I think this is the first time we were introducing a ship of this size with the yacht club and the luxury that we're bringing, 24-hour butler service, private dining in that area. So I'd like to see that taking off and us then growing the market in South Africa and having larger vessels come to South Africa with more swanky restaurants and entertainment.
Don't forget, you know where the invites need to get sent to, by the way, when Splendida comes out. Looking forward to that. Ross, thank you very much. Very, very busy man at the moment. So there we go. Tommy got you and I a cruise. No, I'm joking, Ross. But the Splendida, I've actually seen it. I follow them on social media, and it is one of their most iconic ships as well. It's beautiful. It's stunning. It's massive. So I need to get a camera crew down to Durban when that actually takes place later in the year as well. But Tommy, I completely agree with Ross. I think for the economy that we're in, if a family or if a couple, even an individual, if that's your jam, wants to go on a holiday, a cruise is the way to go, because that price, as he says, is locked in. You know what you're getting, you know where you're going, and you're going to have a lot of fun doing it, and you know what it's going to cost in the end as well. So it's important because MSC is a global player with a very big local footprint as well. So very, very kind of Ross Volker, MD of MSC here in South Africa, to make his way to Sun City, come talk to us ahead of what is going to be the closing, the proper closing of the conference later this morning. When we come back in the next hour, we're going to tell you about a roundtable discussion I'm going to be having with young tourism entrepreneurs. Tommy, but for now, let me come back to you in Hyde Park.